I'm here with Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Alexander, let's talk James Comey. The big news, the Horowitz Report. This was a very focused report, actually, focused on the memos. We've got more reports coming out, which you'll detail as the video goes along. But I want to kind of work maybe in reverse here. And instead of, going into how we got here, let me just read you Comey's 2 tweets that he sent out after the Horowitz Report, where Comey basically says everyone should apologize to me. I want you to comment on those tweets, and then I want you to kind of work your way as to how we got here, Alexander. So let me read you James Comey's 2 tweets once he read the Horowitz Report, and this is how he understands the Horowitz Report's finding on those memos. And I quote, DOJ IG found no evidence that Comey or his attorneys released any of the classified information contained in any of the memos to members of the media. I don't need a public apology from those who defamed me, but a quick message with a sorry we lied about you would be nice. And to all those who've spent 2 years talking about me going to jail or being a liar and a leaker, ask yourselves why you still trust people who gave you bad info for so long, including the president.
Well, I mean, all I will say is either the man is utterly shameless, or he is completely deluded. Now, I've read the Horowitz Report, all 80 plus pages of it. I thought, by the way, it was an outstanding report. It is incredibly well written. If you remember, Alex, the day the Mueller report came out, all 448 pages of it, I read that too, and felt ill because the incredibly unpleasant way in which it was written, and the fact that it was completely disorganized, it was not properly structured. The Horowitz report,
the Wiseman report, you mean?
The Wiseman report. The Horowitz report is everything a proper report should be. It starts with an executive summary. It provides a timeline, a really clear and very helpful timeline. It then goes through all the events, and it sets them out in proper sequence. It gives you a discussion of the legal principles and the legal issues, and then eventually, at the end of it all, you get the proper conclusions at the end, which, as I said, reflect what was said in the executive summary at the beginning. It's a very easy report to read, and it says the diametric opposite of what Comey says. What this report says is that Comey, director of the FBI, former US district attorney, former deputy attorney general of the United States, immensely experienced man that he was, completely trashed the FBI's well-established document handling procedures, took with him out of the FBI property without authorization. You could almost say he stole it, and used it for entirely personal reasons in order to conduct a feud against the President of the United States by engaging in unauthorized and illegal leaking to the news media. Now, how any of that vindicates Comey, how it can in any way be said to justify an apology to him, how people who have criticized him can in any way be said after reading this report to have lied about him, it's insane. It's nonsense. And I have to say, because I don't think Comey is deluded, I think he is frankly shameless. And that's how I would describe those tweets.
There's a lot to get to, Alexander. Let me see. What do I want to discuss here? Giuliani hired Comey. He gave Comey his start. He was on Laura Ingraham. Giuliani says, a couple of things that caught my attention. Giuliani says Comey should be prosecuted.
Yeah.
Giuliani also says that Comey was he implied, he didn't say it, he implied that Comey was not and is not the brains behind this.
No.
That you have Clapper, who's the idiot, and you have Brennan, who's the brains, the CIA. Yeah. What do you make of what Giuliani said on Fox's Laura Ingraham?
Right. Well, first of all, I think that Comey is far from being out of the woods where a prosecution is concerned. I mean, the conduct that was outlined in the Horowitz report is disgraceful. It broke U.S. law. Horowitz says that. I don't think it's any disputed by anyone. The reason Comey has avoided a prosecution is because he has a specific technical defense in that Comey himself had meetings with Donald Trump. He then drafted various memos about Donald Trump. We're going to get into that in detail because his drafting those memos was an extraordinary act in and of itself, and frankly, a very reprehensible act. But anyway, he drafted those memos despite being someone trained in classification, in classifying documents. He didn't classify these memos that he drafted, and he leaked part of these memos to the media through a intermediary, a professor, a law professor who is a friend of his. Now, the reason he escaped prosecution is that the FBI, when it went over those memos, carried out a classification process, which Comey himself had not done, but that classification process only took place after Comey had already leaked them. So that gives Comey the defense that he lacked a possible criminal intention, even though he did what were indisputably illegal acts. Leaking these documents was an illegal act. Of that, there is no taking these documents from the FBI without authorization was an illegal act. So he just escaped by a whisker of prosecution. And Horowitz thought he ought to be prosecuted. Horowitz did a criminal referral. I think that when we get to the Pfizer abuse allegations, which are going to be much more serious, then I think Comey needs to be extremely careful. Now, can I say something about what actually happened? Because I think in order to understand what Horowitz's report is all about, we need to get an idea about the kind of things that were going on between Donald Trump and James Comey. Now, James Comey was the director of the FBI. James Comey was the director of the FBI who, as Horowitz has previously reported, we did a long video about this about a year ago, went against the established protocols and procedures of the Justice Department and of the FBI to give Hillary Clinton a clean bill of health over the issue of Hillary Clinton's misuse of a private server for her emails when she was serving as Secretary of State. So Comey did something radically wrong already in order to help Hillary Clinton during the election.
Can I pause you real quickly, Alexander, there? Because I have a trouble understanding one thing about James Comey, trying to understand his motivation. You mentioned he helped Hillary Clinton. He helped Hillary Clinton, correct? But he also hurt Hillary Clinton during the election, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Can you explain that dynamic there a little bit, or why you think Comey did what he did in order, one, to hurt Hillary Clinton, and if he actually did, and then to help her? Can you explain that a little bit?
I'm going to give you my opinion, and it's based on what I have been seeing of Comey for some time, but it is very, very strongly reinforced.
Because there was a time when the left and the Democrats blamed Comey for Hillary Clinton's election loss.
Yes. I should say my opinion of Comey has been very strongly strengthened by Horowitz's latest report. My view of Comey is that he is a weak, scheming, and completely unprincipled man. He is not committed to Hillary Clinton. He's not committed to anybody other than himself. His whole objective throughout 2016 was to advance the career of one individual, who was James Comey. Now, he was getting all this pressure from Loretta Lynch and the Justice Department and Barack Obama to give Hillary Clinton to cut her, this enormous slack and to let her off. So he came up with this extraordinary rationalization that even though she'd been grossly negligent, only he then sort of had to water that down to say that it wasn't actually grossly negligent, it was grossly careless. She hadn't actually had the criminal intention necessary to commit a crime by sending classified State Department emails through her private server. By the way, a lawyer after lawyer that I'm now reading thinks that argument, the whole argument Comey came up with, was nonsense. But that's what Comey said. That gained him an enormous amount of criticism from the Republicans. He was worried about putting his career at risk because he didn't want to be criticized by the Republicans. So when this laptop belonging to this man Weiner, this former representative who had been married to what was his name, Huma Abedin.
Abedin. Hillary Clinton's most trusted aide. Yeah.
When that laptop turned up, he rushed off this. He informed Congress that he was reopening the investigation. I think he only did that in order to protect his own back from the criticism that he was coming under from the Republicans. But then, of course, it all switched because the Democrats then started to criticize him. So from that moment, he started again to work for the Democrats. And then to his horror, Hillary Clinton lost and Donald Trump won. So he was a shifting weather vane. He was trying to trim his sails all the time to what he thought would be the prevailing wind. But by the time Donald Trump was elected, he had essentially compromised himself completely with Donald Trump. So what he did was he had this series of meetings. Some of them were actual one-to-one meetings. Some of them were telephone conversations. Starting with a one-to-one meeting he had with Donald Trump on the 7th of January 2017. This is before Donald Trump's inauguration. This is the meeting where Donald Trump met all the chiefs of the intelligence community, the U.S. intelligence community, and where they presented him with the now infamous joint intelligence assessment, which said that Russia hacked the DNC and had tried to help him, that's to say Donald Trump, win the election and block Hillary Clinton. After that meeting, Comey had this further meeting with Donald Trump, in which Comey showed him extracts from the Steele dossier. And it's known that Donald Trump thought that meeting was an attempt to blackmail him. I mean, this has come out now from Trump's side. So Comey goes away and he writes a detailed memo about this meeting. And then he has more meetings with Donald Trump, telephone conversations, sometimes meetings in the White House, one-to-one meetings, all very irregular. The president should not be meeting with the director of the FBI in this way. But then Donald Trump, remember, is somebody who has no experience of political office up to that point. It was always open to Comey to say to Trump, Mr. President, it's not appropriate that I should be meeting you one-to-one in this way. If you want us to have this meeting, you should have the Attorney General of the United States here, because it is to him I must report, and he reports to you. But Comey apparently never said that to Donald Trump. So they continue to have these meetings. Then Comey would go away and write these memos. And frankly, the way it looks to me is that Comey was building a case. He was meeting with Trump, cherry picking things Trump said, recording them to make it look as if Trump was engaging in some kind of inappropriate activity, and holding them back for the day when he would eventually release them. Why else would you make memos like this if you did not intend to publish them eventually in some form? So I think he was building a case. Now, I have to say that when I first heard about these memos, I thought these memos were attendance notes. I mean, anybody who goes into a formal meeting knows that, people who attend these meetings, they make notes of meetings, then they write them up. And that's an attendance note. But of course, the whole point about an attendance note is that they are circulated to all the people who attended the meeting, so that there is an agreed record of what happened. That was not what these memos were. They were secret memos that Comey himself created and circulated amongst a very small group of trusted insiders within the FBI. And when I say trusted insiders, the people we're talking about are people like Andrew McCabe, who was eventually sacked for leaking information against Donald Trump, and those two eternals that always turn up in any discussion of Russiagate and the FBI, the dynamic duo, if you like, the two lovers, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. So they knew about these memos. Very few other people did know about these memos. So he kept these memos for himself, building up a case against Donald Trump. And when Donald Trump sacked him, he took these memos with him, gave them to his lawyers. Remember, these are memos which, as Horowitz explained, because they were written for FBI-related work, actually belong to the FBI. They were never at any time Comey's personal property, even though Comey pretended that they were. Anyway, he gave them completely inappropriately to his own lawyers and to a friend who was a law professor, and he released these memos to the media in order to put Donald Trump in a position of disfavor and to leverage the appointment of special counsel. Now, this is terrible activity. You hold one-to-one meetings with the President of the United States. You don't tell him those meetings are inappropriate. You let him continue to have these meetings with you.
You tell him he's not under investigation.
You tell him he's not under investigation, even though it's quite obvious, I think, now that essentially he was. I mean, that was, if not quite a brazen lie, it was, as we say in England, very economical with the truth. Very economical with the truth. You cherry pick things the president says and puts them in memos. Quite possibly says, might not, we weren't there. We don't know how accurate these memos are. But I strongly suspect that some of these comments were taken completely out of context. And then eventually you take them away, keep them to use them yourself, and then you leak them. And Horowitz has a lot to say about the way in which Comey leaked these documents, even shortly after he'd come to the House Intelligence Committee and said what a terrible thing leaking is and why it should never happen. And, it's completely inappropriate that people should leak FBI and Justice Department information in this way. He leaked them in order to discredit Donald Trump and to engineer the appointment of special counsel. So it was a terrible thing that he did. And for Comey to go around talking about, him deserving apologies is awful.
Have you ever heard of anyone leaking counterintelligence information? This was a counterintelligence case.
Yes.
Was it not? This wasn't a criminal investigation.
No, it wasn't.
And so why would the FBI and why would Comey, the director of the FBI, feel a need to leak such information if it's not of a criminal investigation nature? I mean, that in and of itself doesn't make any sense. I mean, the fact that it was pre-planned as well, Alexander. He had from what I understand, he had all the satellite hookups, everything coordinated when he went back to his car with this team of McCabe, Page, Strzok, so that they could document everything. So, I mean, he was prepared before he went into the meeting.
Oh, absolutely.
This was premeditated.
Exactly. It was absolutely I'm very glad you mentioned that, because these memos are very, very carefully constructed documents, fully premeditated. Of that, there is no question. And I'm going to say something. I mean, even people like Andrew McCabe were getting extremely nervous about what Comey was doing. I mean, even they could see that this was wrong at multiple levels. Even someone like McCabe, who, as we know, was also very, very hostile to Donald Trump. But can I say something? I mean, you brought up the fact that it was a counterintelligence investigation. First of all, it was completely inappropriate of Comey to disclose the fact that there was any kind of investigation going on at all, whether it was counterintelligence, whether it was a criminal investigation. Horowitz points this out. It was completely inappropriate for him to talk in that way. That's the first thing. The second thing is, about this investigation, there's always been this mystery about the FBI's investigation into Russiagate, the so-called Crossfire Hurricane investigation, which is, when did it cease to be a counterintelligence investigation and become a criminal investigation? Was there actually a moment when it stopped being one and became the other? Or did it somehow evolve from one into the other? We've never been properly told.
Well, what do you think?
Well, I actually think that it was never actually, there was never actually a decision made. I think that already, by the time that Comey was making all these memos, he clearly thought of what he was doing as a criminal investigation. And when he says, when he told Donald Trump at that time that Donald Trump himself was not being investigated, he was investigating Donald Trump. That's what the making of those memos was. He was taking down evidence that he intended at some point to use against Donald Trump, and which he eventually did use.
Where have we seen this before? Papadopoulos, Flynn.
Yeah.
I mean, Comey was pretty much running the same playbook on all of these guys. He was. This was an entrapment. This was a dangle, which we've documented in the Papadopoulos videos that we've done over the past 6 months. I mean, it was everything about this, about Comey's actions, were all about taking down Donald Trump. The way he took down Flynn and Papadopoulos.
And the way in which Maria Butina was also taken
And Maria
down
Butina,
because we
and
have
raiding
these
Roger Stone's house, yeah.
house and all these things. I mean, this is one. I mean, it is an extraordinarily ugly, very, very ugly affair. And given that we're talking about the President of the United States, attempts to entrap the President of the United States, I mean, this is the worst of it, which is why I think Horowitz has done a discreet report on this specific issue, because, as I said, the picture that comes out is a terrible one. Now, I have to say this, Comey wasn't acting alone. Now,
Giuliani says it goes, Giuliani implies it goes to Brennan.
Yeah. Well,
Get into that. We have a book, Alexander, which, once again, no one can say it's factual, but we have a book called Shatter, which does say 24 hours after Hillary Clinton's election loss at her Brooklyn headquarters, John Podesta, Robbie Mook, Hillary Clinton, I'm sure Huma Abedin was there, maybe Mills, a lot of Hillary insiders, maybe Weissman.
Yeah.
They concocted this Russia did it narrative.
Yes.
And they pushed it, and to a certain extent, it worked because all of this happened, and we got a special counsel Mueller and everything that followed it. So get into all of that, Alexander, because this runs deep.
Because it runs very deep, but you see, I think it goes back earlier than the day after the election. I mean, clearly, they doubled down on the Russiagate story after the election, because I think what they were looking to do at that point was to delegitimize Trump. But I suspect that their major concern was that all sorts of very, very wrong and inappropriate things had already been happening before the election. And the trouble is, what makes it really bad is that they were able to enlist the work of the US government's own intelligence and spying agencies. They got the FBI, and I am sure the CIA, and probably the intelligence agencies of other major powers allied to the United States, first and foremost Britain, to assist them to help Hillary Clinton get elected and to block and discredit Donald Trump. Now, that is a terrible thing if it's true, and I think it is true. Now, there's another very interesting piece of information. There was a very interesting article.
What bad things, Alexander? I have to ask you.
This is where I'm coming.
Yeah, because you threw it out there.
Very, very interesting article that we just came out on Zero Hedge, and I think I sent it to you, in which it spoke about the information that AG Barr, that Attorney General Barr, and his own investigator, John Durham, are looking at. And what they're looking at is this. Firstly, there's the Pfizer abuse, the fact that people like Carter Page, the fact that people probably like George Papadopoulos, and probably all sorts of other people were placed under surveillance. This, remember, happened during the election itself. We have the dangles, as we call them, the attempts to entrap Papadopoulos. That happened during the election. I mean, that was when he was meeting people like Mifsud in London. That was when he was also meeting people like Stefan Halper later. These events took place during the election itself. So there's this massive surveillance of Donald Trump campaign aides happening during the election, and there's all these stories being spread in the media during the election, including an extraordinary statement published by the US intelligence agencies in October 2016, a month before the election, that the Russians were trying to help Donald Trump. All of this going on during the election itself. Now, the key document, in my opinion, is a hand-delivered document that we know was sent by the CIA, by John Brennan, to the White House for Barack Obama to read, apparently eyes only, detailing alleged information from a source within the Kremlin that Putin had somehow given instructions to the Russian intelligence community to assist Donald Trump. Now, I have always believed, I've known about this this information, this eyes-only document since June 2017, because the Washington Post disclosed its existence then. Apparently, Barr and Duran want to see it. And I think the reason they want to see it is because their suspicion, which I suspect their suspicion is the same suspicion that I have had and various other people have had, including Andrew McCarthy, who you mentioned just before, that this famous source within the Kremlin is in fact one and the same as Christopher Steele's dossier.
Repeat that. Alexander, you're saying this Kremlin source,
yes,
in this letter that Brennan sent to Obama's eyes only, was actually Christopher Steele.
Yes. Well, Christopher Steele or his dossier.
His dossier, right.
His dossier. Things that were coming out from Christopher Steele. I'm not the only person who thinks this. And this Zero Hedge article said that that's now what is becoming widely believed. And that Zero Hedge article looked very well sourced to me. So, consider the implications of that, because we now know that Steele's dossier was paid for the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Democrats. It looks as if that dossier was circulating around, first in Britain, then in the United States, through the US intelligence community, through the CIA, and was being used as the pretext to engage in all this extraordinary campaign of surveillance through the FISA warrants, of all these entrapment exercises of people like Papadopoulos, Carter Page, Maria Butina, and as it now turns out, Donald Trump. And that the origin of all of this, if you follow the money, is Hillary Clinton and her own campaign. I don't know what Hillary Clinton's role was, but at any rate, the DNC and her campaign.
Hillary Clinton and the DNC hire Glenn Simpson. The law office hires Glenn Simpson. He works with Christopher Steele. After some time, a letter ends up on Obama's desk from Brennan, which says, take a look. We don't know for sure, take a look at this letter, which details the Kremlin helping Donald Trump to get elected as ordered by Vladimir Putin. What role does Obama play in this then? Is this something that Obama looks at as president of the United States and says, put a stop to this because we are talking about the U.S. intelligence agencies being weaponized during an election cycle and we can't have any of that? Or is this something Obama says, I don't do whatever you guys want, but just don't, this better not get back to me? Or is this something Obama says, press hard or we cannot have Trump become the next US president?
Right. First thing, I have to correct you on one thing. As I understand it, of course, we haven't seen this document yet. That document did not say that we can't be sure that the Russians are helping. What this document said is we have this reliable source inside the Kremlin who says the Russians are helping under Vladimir Putin's personal orders.
Even worse.
Far worse.
So you're president, Alexander. What do you do? What does Obama do?
What does Obama do? Well, we don't know. Because this is always the thing with Obama. He always covers his tracks. We don't know. But we do know that the people closest to him, people like Susan Rice, who was his national security advisor, people like Samantha Powell, who was his ambassador at the UN, were busy unmasking. We're busy unmasking people across the U.S. bureaucracy, Trump people, across the US federal bureaucracy at an absolutely feverish pace in the autumn of 2016. So were they doing all of that without Obama knowing? Was Obama ignorant of the fact that all this surveillance was taking place? Did he call in his intelligence agencies and say to them, look, I'm getting this report, what does it mean? How reliable is this? Where is this information coming from? Remember, Obama is a lawyer. He's a lawyer. Does he do any of these things? It seems not. What we do know is that Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, who are at the coalface, manipulating pulling all the levers, setting up all the entrapments, doing all of these things. They're sending messages to each other in which they say the POTUS, i.e. Barack Obama, is taking a great interest in everything we're doing.
So that is the key document.
That's for me the key document. What did the president know? When did he know it? And what did he do?
Will we get that key document?
Yeah, well, Barr is asking for it. Barr and Duran want to see it. Maybe they've already seen. Maybe it will be just declassified.
Why are so few people reporting on this? At least in the mainstream media. I know you said Zero Hedge is running an article on this. Why is this not front and center news?
Very, very, very few people are reporting on all of this. But people are not reporting as much as they should on the Comey revelations either. And the reason they're not reporting on all of this is because, of course, Barack Obama is the great liberal president. Hillary Clinton was the great liberal candidate. The Democrats were the party that the media supported. And, of course, they don't want information coming out that will put all of these people in a potentially bad light and might lead eventually to criminal charges. Now, can I say what I think is going to happen? I think we will get all this information. I think that Barr will get all this information out. I think Horowitz and Duran, who are working incredibly hard and doing an excellent job, so it seems. Horowitz's 2 reports, as I said, have been impeccable. Are doing really good work in investigating the investigators properly. I invite anybody who wants to understand this issue to read Horowitz's latest report. It can be easily found on the internet. I think that there will be prosecutions, and I predict that the media, which has run this hoax for 3 years against Donald Trump, will then launch this huge outcry that it is a political witch hunt.
A political witch hunt against Obama and Hillary? That's how they're going to spin it.
I think it's exactly what they're going to say. That this is a witch hunt against all these diligent, dedicated people: Clapper, Comey, Susan Rice, Samantha Powell. For all I know, I mean, I'm not going to say who's going to be indicted and who's not. John Brennan. I think John Brennan, by the way. I think Comey and Brennan, in particular, need to be very concerned at the moment. If I was advising them, if I was their friend, which, by the way, I'm glad to say I'm not, I would be saying to them, I think you need to start getting very good lawyers.
Because of the next report that deals with the FISA documents. You mean that?
Exactly,
so Comey's not out of the woods.
Oh,
no, he is not out of the woods.
No. This, I think, is in some ways the smallest thing. I mean, it's awful. I mean, trying to entrap the President of the United States is so awful. It's off the scale. But undertaking surveillance of the man who is eventually elected President of the United States during the presidential election in order to help his opponent win is, in my opinion, even worse.
Do you think the tarmac meeting between Lynch and Clinton had anything to do with all of this? I mean, we never had that clarified at all, that tarmac meeting.
Alex, I have absolutely no doubt it had a great deal to do with all of this, but we haven't yet had the whole details of it. I want to repeat what I've said before. For me, that was almost like the sort of thing you see in a mafia film where, somebody's investigating Al Capone. Some, little policeman in some precinct is investigating Al Capone, and Al Capone suddenly turns up at his office, surrounded with all his people, and he doesn't have to say anything because he's Al Capone, but the message and the threat is all there. This is what happened. Loretta Lynch is the Attorney General of the United States, but she is confronted by Bill Clinton, the former president of the United States, the husband of Hillary Clinton, who is supposedly under investigation. And I think by Bill Clinton coming along, simply through the act of meeting her, he was giving Loretta Lynch an extraordinary warning. He was saying to her, don't mess with my wife.
Oh, boy.
That's how it looks to me. I mean, others are free to disagree, but that's how it looks to me. Again, remember, Loretta Lynch is a lawyer. Bill Clinton, people forget, is also a trained lawyer. He knows perfectly well that you shouldn't be meeting in this kind of way the person who is supposed to be in charge of the investigation of your wife.
And we haven't even touched upon the SR incident or the Epstein incident, with all these things that are connected around Clinton, which takes us into a whole different road. My mind is racing, Alexander. Any other final thoughts? I mean, I jotted down here that James Comey was actually giving an interview to Bret Baier, Fox News, and to his credit, Bret Baier pressed him on the fact that he was taking notes, memos during a meeting with the president, because Comey told Bret that those were for his personal memoirs. And Bret Baier pressed him and said, yeah, but you were taking these memos while on the job. I mean, it's common sense.
Well, I mean, can I just say, I mean, I haven't seen this interview, but if you really
it was a while back,
but if he's really said to this interviewer that he took them for his own personal memoirs.
To Fox News, he said that.
Then that is not what he said to Horowitz. He said to Horowitz that he took those memos in order to protect himself and the FBI. It's completely different. It's completely different, and specifically the FBI. So Comey says one thing to one person, says something completely different to someone else about these memos. Can I just come back to those memos? Let's say Comey really had concerns about Donald Trump. Let's say he felt that Donald Trump had said completely inappropriate things in a one-to-one meeting. What should Comey have done? He should have written a letter to White House counsel Don McGahn saying, I had a meeting with the president on such and such a day. The president said to me X, Y, Z. I have to point out that it's not appropriate for the president to discuss these sort of questions with me. Can you please explain to the president that these one-to-one meetings between myself and him at a time when there is a counter-espionage and investigation underway are inappropriate and wrong, and if he does want to meet with me, he should only do so in the presence of the Attorney General. What could be simpler? Alex, I have been in situations where I've had to write letters like that. So many people, anybody who works in a public office environment understands that sometimes you have to write those kind of letters or memos. What prevented Comey doing that? Nothing. He is a very, very experienced public official. He is a trained lawyer. He didn't do those things because he wasn't protecting the FBI or protecting himself or providing himself with material to write his memoirs. He was building a case against the President of the United States, his own boss, Donald Trump.
All right, let's bring this full circle and go back to the Comey tweet so we could end out this video, Alexander. We've been talking for about 45 minutes now. It's a huge story. It's so interesting. But how do you think Flynn, Papadopoulos, Roger Stone, Carter Page, what must be going through their minds when they see Comey, who's done 1,000 times worse things and is bragging about getting off the hook? What do you think goes through guys like that's mind? I mean, if you're Flynn or Papadopoulos or Stone and you're facing prison time.
Well, I'm not a mind reader, but
I'm putting it in that context.
I would tell you what I would think. I would feel sick. I mean, the person who I think has the right to feel the most angry looking at all of this is Michael Flynn, highly decorated U.S. general, national security advisor of the United States. He conducts a telephone conversation with the Russian ambassador, apparently at the president-elect's request. That's not been completely confirmed. This, over the course of that conversation, he does absolutely nothing inappropriate or wrong. He asks the Russians not to impose reciprocal sanctions against the United States. Nothing inappropriate or wrong. He's tricked into a meeting with two officials of the FBI. One of them, by the way, is Peter Strzok, which goes totally against protocol. He's not aware that these two people are investigating him. He is not shown the transcript which exists of this conversation between himself and the Russian ambassador, in which, let me repeat again, he did nothing wrong. No one is saying he did anything wrong. He says some things about that conversation, which it turns out were not true, either because he's forgotten them or because he's out of perhaps a sense of loyalty to the president, feels that he shouldn't really disclose this kind of information to FBI agents. And what happens? He's prosecuted, he's convicted, he's thrown out of his job, he's had appalling publicity and awful things written about him. He's called a traitor.
Massive monetary loss. I mean, they say
massive monetary loss.
Sold his house, all kinds of things.
Exactly. He's treated in the most appalling way. And yet Comey, who tried to create a case against the President of the United States, kept all these memos. And by the way, I'm going to express my own view. The reason Comey didn't classify these memos was precisely because he intended them, this is my belief, to publish them. He realized that if he classified them, it would restrict his ability to publish them. So he intentionally didn't classify them in order to be able to publish them later. He then took these memos out of the FBI, which Comey had no right to do, and leaked them to the media, which was the most terrible thing. So, I mean, Flynn did nothing wrong except say one, incorrect thing to the FBI. Comey engaged in a conspiracy against the President of the United States. Flynn has a conviction. Comey has walked free.
Absolutely sickening.
Flynn will say, "Where's the justice?" And I have to agree.
Absolutely sickening. Absolutely. I mean, they have got to prosecute. Barr has to prosecute people, Alexander. If he doesn't.
Well, I think a number of things have to happen. Firstly, I think Flynn and all the others. By the way, and I'm going to be controversial here, I think Paul Manafort also. need to be pardoned. And I think the reason why Manafort should be pardoned, as well as Flynn definitely has to be pardoned, Papadopoulos definitely should be pardoned, all of these people should be pardoned. But even someone like Manafort, who I think is guilty of the crimes he's been accused of, should be pardoned, because this was a political prosecution. This was a misuse of the criminal law to achieve a political end. And in European human rights law, at least, that is accepted as a violation of human rights. So for that reason alone, I think Manafort should be pardoned. And I think all of those people who did these terrible things, Comey, Brennan, Rice, whatever, I mean, they need to get lawyers, because frankly, I think they should be investigated. And if these investigations lead where I think they will, they should be charged, and after a proper trial and proper due process, if those charges are found true, they should be convicted and sent to prison.
Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran, thank you very much. Guys, if you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below. Click on the notifications bell to make sure you get notifications every time we push out a new video. And you can get an audio copy of this video by following us on iTunes and SoundCloud. The link is in the description box down below. Please donate to the Duran so we can continue to create awesome videos like the one that you just saw. PayPal, Patreon, and Subscribestar. The links are in the description box down below. And another way you can help us create videos like this one, which ran 51, I'm seeing right now, 51 minutes, is by going to the Duran shop and picking up some merchandise. Alexander, what do you have there?
Well, I mean, this is Russiagate, so I have a mug of the kind that Putin drinks from with the Russian Federation symbol on it, which, of course, he had a mug like that at the G20 summit a couple of months ago. So there you go. The reason we have mugs with these symbols on is because, obviously, they're so incredibly stylish, and they remind me, at least, of the double-headed eagle, which is the Duran double-headed eagle, which I can also see, by the way, on the T-shirt that you're also wearing. I mean, this is our own double-headed eagle. It covers east and west, all points of the compass. But the reason we drink from mugs like this is because, well, I mean, you said it, 51 minutes. I mean, think of the time, energy, hours of reading through these detailed reports and getting on top of all this material that we have to spend. We need mugs like this to drink sustaining tea, as I do, in order to get through all that. And this is a fantastic mug for drinking tea, coffee, beer, hot chocolate, whatever you like. 15 ounces, beautiful porcelain, fantastic mugs. And of course, we've got shirts on our site. On our shop, we've got shirts like this marvelous 100% cotton shirt I'm wearing. We've got T-shirts like the very stylish one that Alex is wearing. We've got stickers. We've got hats.
Ebooks.
We've got hoodies. And we've got ebooks. I was going to come to the ebooks because the ebooks, of course, 2 of them are on Russiagate. If you think Russiagate is complicated, don't despair. Go to our 2 ebooks and all will be made clear, because we have made it all absolutely transparent. We have explained in those 2 ebooks exactly what Russiagate was all about, both how it started and what Mueller and his ghastly report and investigation were all about too. So if you really want to understand Russiagate and also Brexit, we've done an ebook on Brexit, you'll find it all there. So why are you holding back? Why delay? Go straight to our shop, help yourself, help the Duran, enlarge your understanding, buy our mugs, read our books, and make yourself look really stylish by wearing our shirts.
Absolutely. Get some magic mugs at theduranshop.com. The link is in the description box down below. And of course, the original double-headed eagle and everything on the Duran is original Duran designed stuff. Don't buy anything else that tries to copy us. Alexander Mercouris.
Very good point, because we're already starting to see imitators.
Yes. There are a lot of shops that are already copying our gear, so buy it from the Duran.
But can I also add, ours is not only the real thing, it is a very, very high quality, as all our customers say. Our feedback is tremendous. These cheap imitators, you're not going to get the real product from them, and it's going to be very inferior.
Absolutely. Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran, thank you very much. Until next time, everybody, take care.